All right, so you can see now I have the compressor installed. If you take a look, you can see over here where that, get out of the way here, where that bracket's installed. And this is where we can slide the compressor back and forth in this slot here and tighten this down to get our tension on our belt. Right now, these bolts and the one down at the bottom down there that's holding it on, those are all just snugged. And got the wiring harness hooked on it. The ground wire goes back there, and then back over here there's a little bracket that attaches to the back where the wire goes, clips to, and then this is the rest of the wire. Once I get all the wiring harness hooked up, that'll plug into the wiring harness. Now you can see back here at this bracket here, there's another slot for adjustment, and it looks like something's missing. Well, actually it's not. So from 1973 to 77, the Blazer, or actually on the trucks too, pickup trucks, GM had a bracket that went here, went down and bolted onto the intake manifold, and the bracket came up behind here, and the bracket had a nut welded on the back, and you'd put a bolt in there, and it allowed you to adjust it in the back as well in the front. Well, in 78, they eliminated that bracket, but they didn't change this bracket here. They left it the same. They just stopped putting that bracket on. I'm not sure for what reason, but that's what they did. And then this compressor, they still kept using this compressor up to about 1980, and then they switched over to the radial type compressor that I showed you before. And then when they did that, then that changed all the brackets. So maybe they had envisioned that they were going to be changing something and decided they didn't need to redo the brackets at this time. But at any rate, that's how they did it. And then over here, we got this line here coming out. And this line will go right through this hole here, and it's going to connect down in front to our, this ladder out of the way, going to connect down in front here to our condenser. And you can see the condenser's already installed. Just down at the bottom and up at the top, there's 4 bolts that hold it in place. But you can notice that this hose doesn't reach these fittings. On some vehicles, that hose will connect directly to it. On this particular vehicle, I don't know if we can see it in the dark here. You can't really see it up in here. But right here where my fingers are, there's a hole in this brace. And what we have, and I still got to clean them up here on top of the ladder, I have these pipes. And this is how GM did it. These pipes would connect to the condenser, come through the firewall, through that hole, through this rubber grommet, and then that one hose that I showed you is going to connect to it. And then I'll show you another hose. The return line is going to connect to it in a minute as well. So now, if you take a look here, you can see, let me get this. So this style fitting here, you'll see that when I slide it back, kind of hard to do this holding the camera in that. You'll notice it's got this little indentation. Get it where it's in focus, huh? Got this little indentation, and right in front of it there, that's where you would slip on a rubber seal, a little O-ring. And then that slides into, that would slide in, wouldn't slide into this pipe, but the pipe on the other end there, it would slide into it, and then the two would connect together. And then the fitting at the other end, where's my fitting? There it is. This fitting here is actually soldered in place, or brazed in place on the line, so it doesn't move. And then a fitting like that would attach to it that's coming off the other hose. For whatever reason, I don't know why GM decided to do these hoses in steel, because they get all rusty. Everything else is aluminum, but that's how they did it. And they come from the factory just bare steel, so they get rusty even faster. So I just got to clean them up. This one's a little bit pitted, but basically they're solid. They're not rotting through, so they'll work. So what happens then is like I said, this line here will connect to one of them. And then up here sitting on top of the radiator, this line's going to connect to the other one. And it's going to have a clip that's going to be right on the edge here where the radiator support is. And that clip will hold it. And then come over to the other side here. And there'll be another bolt holding the radiator support in. And there'll be a clip holding this hose up there as well. And then that hose is going to wrap around and it's going to come down here and connect down to this part of the evaporator. This is the return hose. Right down in here, you see those little indentations in there? Those indentations are there to hold the orifice valve. Or the orifice tube, excuse me. Whoop. Dropped it. So this is the orifice tube. This is what this looks like here. It's got a little O-ring on it, and it's going to slide down inside that tube, and those little divots that are in the tube will keep it from going any further than it has to. And then over here, told you my camera work's not the greatest. Then this fitting will seal it in place. And then you can see we have the fitting right here. This would be the high side on this particular system. Again, this is the return line or the liquid line. So this is where after the Freon or the refrigerant that's in the condenser, after the air goes through it, the cooler air, the heat that's in that refrigerant, because remember that refrigerant's real hot from being compressed by the compressor, that refrigerant's going to release its heat into the cooler air, and the moving of the car and the fan's going to take that heat away. And while it does that, it's going to take and change that refrigerant to liquid again. So it's going to change state from a high pressure gas back down to a liquid refrigerant, and that's why we call it the liquid line. And then it's going to go back through this line and go back in down at the bottom of the evaporator. And that orifice tube, it's a fixed orifice tube, so it's going to allow that refrigerant to flow back in there at a fixed rate and a fixed amount. So it's not gonna let any more get in there than it needs, and it's not gonna flow any faster, any slower than it needs. It's just gonna flow at a fixed rate. That's the restriction in there in this particular system, using an orifice tube, a fixed orifice tube, and it's gonna control that liquid coming back into the evaporator, and then that starts the whole system over again, where the warm air starts to absorb into the refrigerant, turns it into a gas, goes through your accumulator, out through this hose here, and back over to the compressor on the other side of the engine, and voila, we keep the circle going. So that's it. I'll connect the rest of this stuff up. I don't have to show you another video with it all connected, but there might be another video coming along with something else that I'm doing on this. Keep you guys doing something, but you can see I have quite a few things left to do. And looking at the video here, I can see that my alternator is not lined up with my fan belt. You can see right here it's a little bit off, so there must be a spacer or something that still has to go in there to get it lined up so the belts don't wear and break. But yep, got a lot of things left to do. So I got a little bit of work to do here, clean some parts up, get the rest of this system back together, and everything will be good. So that's it for now. We'll talk to y'all later. Bye.